Talk 16. Doctor Who? Doctor No. At the dinner table, conversation drifts effortlessly into subtle ranking. Promotions mentioned casually. Travel stories calibrated carefully. Renovations described in just enough detail. Nobody announces the competition, but everybody senses it. Comparison hums quietly beneath the politeness. Identity begins forming relationally. I am more successful than him. I am less established than her. It's rarely nasty. It's not malicious. It's almost automatic. We measure to orient ourselves. But when identity relies on positioning within a group, stability becomes fragile. The group shifts, the metrics change. Someone younger arrives with sharper credentials, and suddenly your internal ranking trembles. I remember my sister's hissing, jealous reaction when I got my dad a particularly good Christmas present, a Wembley Stadium DVD of his football team, Baden Rovers. I had a friend called Bernie, and he made a big deal that he had gone to the Royal Academy of Art. I had to do a job at the Royal Academy of Art, and my plan, I told him, was to take one of my paintings and pretend to be wheeling it out and pretend to get caught and offer to go back and put it back on the wall where I'd found it. If wealth defines you, what happens when wealth changes? If family defines you, what happens when roles change? If skills define you, what happens when memory fades? The self seems conditional. Everything we attach identity to changes. Bank balances fluctuate. Houses decay. Institutions close. Bodies decay. If identity depends on unstable things, instability is built in. We hope lineage will carry us forward. A surname, a family line, a reputation. But each generation forgets parts of the last. Sometimes it's a good thing. You know, the monk's steel alms bowl is smooth. It's metal. If dropped, it can stand the shock. It is carefully designed to maximize embarrassment if accidentally dropped in a public place. The bounce and speed of the roll of a monk's alms bowl is almost impossible to estimate and to chase. It wobbles and speeds in a huge arc all at the same time. Rolling around in a wide arc, almost deliberately it would seem, over towards the ladies' underwear stall. When this happened to me, as I chased around after it, it loudly rattled and rolled. The robes will usually at this point also sloosh off the shoulder. This sight in a medium-sized crowded market is bound to be imprinted on the minds of all who see it for life. The monk searching under the Islamic ladies' underwear stall for his escaping rolling alms bowl. All components of identity, body, feeling, perceptions, mind formations, and experience of consciousnesses, they all arise and pass. Titles arise and pass. Wealth arises and passes. Memory shifts. Projection changes. What we cling to as me is a process, not a fixed entity. When identity is tied to status, others become competitors. When tied to lineage, others become extensions. When tied to wealth, others become comparisons. Attachment to identity subtly shapes behavior. Some tactics to try at home and out. When introducing yourself, experiment occasionally with describing what you care about rather than what you do. Instead of, I am a such and such, try, I'm interested in. The shift moves identity from fixed label to dynamic engagement. Over time, this subtle language change reduces rigidity around role-based identity. And instead of asking, how will I be remembered? Ask, how am I behaving now? Legacy anxiety projects forward. Presence returns attention to immediate conduct. The future story writes itself from present action. Next, spend 5 minutes daily sitting without referencing past or future. Notice that identity weakens without past memory or future projection. This is not mystical. It's experiential. When the story making pauses, just being remains. A reflection. Sit quietly and watch what the mind reaches for when it wants to be and feel real. Does it reach for the bank balance, the titles, the familiar story of my life? Notice how quickly reassurance becomes identity. When reassurance flickers, the self flickers. Let the mind show you its favorite supports. Then ask gently, without argument, is support the same thing as self? Stay with the silence after the question. Some people have bad luck in life. There was a man asked his phone, Siri, why am I still single? And it activated the front camera. The man got hit by a bike every day. He was stuck in a vicious cycle. A priest asks the convicted murderer in the electric chair, do you have any last requests? Yes, replies the murderer. Can you please hold my hand? Many people invest in dreams of the perfect afterlife. The Buddha once described a man standing at a crossroads, carefully building a staircase, plank by plank, stone by stone, step by step. People asked him, what are you building this for? Where's it going? He replies, to a magnificent palace. They ask, that palace, where is it? North? Is it south? Is it east or west? Is it high up or low down? Or he says, I don't know. They said, have you ever seen it? He said, no. They said, and yet you're building a staircase to reach it? Yeah. The Buddha uses this image to question beliefs about the permanently happy self after death. If you haven't seen it, known it, or even experienced a hint of it, what exactly are you building towards? We do this often. We construct mental staircases to imagine certainties, permanent happiness, guaranteed security, flawless futures. Before building the steps, it may be wise to ask, based on how we know life to be, is there really such a palace there? Imagine your role dissolving tonight. No badge, no income label, no social position. What is left in the morning? The unease is not practical alone. It is the fear of groundlessness. Identity wants a fixed center. Reflection tests that hope. Between memory and future planning, notice present awareness. Simple, immediate, not defined by resume or legacy. Reflect on how identity strategies steer behavior. When I define myself by achievement, I become competitive. When I define myself by prestige, I manage impressions. When I define myself by lineage, I become protective. Ask, what behaviors does my identity demand? And then ask, who carries the cost of that demand? Let honesty, not theory, be the answer. This happened in Ireland. I heard a man telling me once that he'd learned to bless himself in the Christian way in Ireland. The blessing is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. He said, first time I learned to bless myself was sadly when my uncle died. And he had been buried in a kind of remote part of the Dublin mountains. And it was a real funeral day. The wind was whipping down and the rain. And I'm just 6 years old, kind of wandering around between these legs and this black shroud and umbrellas and dripping rain. This hole in the ground. I didn't know what it was all about. And I'm watching the coffin being lowered into the ground. And I hear the priest say what I think is, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and into the Holy goes. And that's how he blessed himself for many years. The name of the Father, the Son, and into the Holy goes. Comparison constructs identity through hierarchy. Higher and lower create shape. Without a ladder, ranking collapses. Notice how the self expands in favorable company and contracts in impressive company. That expansion and contraction reveal dependency on context. Insight removes the ladder. What remains is steadier and less reactive. Legacy is projected memory. We imagine how we will be remembered and attempt to secure continuity through future storytelling. But legacy depends entirely on retelling by others. Insight sees that striving to control future narrative is a fragile strategy. Present conduct is real. Future remembrance is speculation. A guy was wandering through the Sahara Desert, desperate for water, when he spotted something far off in the distance. With hope in his heart, he walked toward it, only to find an old man sitting at a card table which was covered in neckties. The guy pleaded, "Please, I'm dying of thirst. Can I have some water?" The old man replied, "I don't have any water. How about a tie? This one would look great with your shirt." The guy snapped, "I don't want a tie, you lunatic. I'm dying. I need water. Water." The old man stayed calm. "Okay, don't buy a tie, but I'll still help you. About 5 miles over that sand dune, my brother runs a restaurant. They'll give you all the water you want." The guy thanked him and stumbled away towards the sand dune. 3 hours later, the guy came crawling back, parched and exhausted. The old man said, "What happened? Couldn't he find the restaurant?" The guy rasps, "I found it, but they wouldn't let me in without a tie." Here are some takeaway tactics for you to try at home and out. Practical ways to put ideas into your day. Choose one possession tied strongly to identity, an award, a status object, a symbolic item. Place it out of sight for a week. Observe whether identity feels threatened. The experiment reveals attachment without forcing renunciation. Distance brings clarity. I remember there was one DVD disc of my most ultimate performance, my peak of my career at a community arts festival. It was left in my attic. My dad threw it away. He saved me a job, actually. I would have had to go all the way back, look at it, and then throw it away. Next, list your current roles: parent, professional, mentor, student, son, daughter. Now imagine losing one temporarily. Notice the emotional response. The aim is not pessimism, but preparation. Flexibility reduces shock when change arrives. When imposter thoughts arise, replace "I don't belong" with "this is a new role forming." Growth feels unstable because identity is adjusting. Treat instability as transition, not fraudulence. Spend 5 minutes daily in direct sensory awareness. No past review, no future rehearsal. Notice that experience continues without identity narration. This trains familiarity with being prior to story. Think of a role you once defended strongly. Perhaps you no longer hold it. Notice that life continued. The fear beforehand was larger than the reality after. Reflection reveals that identity often overestimates its own fragility. Family stories shape identity quietly. You were always the responsible one. Notice how such sentences settle into self-definition. Reflection allows re-examination. A story repeated is not necessarily a story required. We sometimes imagine we are things we are not. A guy went to a psychiatrist because he was having an identity crisis. He said, "Some days I feel like a teepee." He says, you know, those tall, the ones that Red Indians live in. Then other days, I feel like a wigwam. I don't know which one is true. One day teepee, the next day wigwam, teepee, wigwam, teepee, wigwam, teepee, wigwam. The psychiatrist yells, "So much stress. You're too tense." Trying to live English lay life after renouncing money as a kind of undercover monk. It's not easy. I was staying with a friend in London. I took to my monk training and soon found a row of restaurants. An Indian, Thai, and Bengali. They could be Buddhist. I was asking for alms food. Remember, I wasn't touching money. I noticed also a canteen on another doorway, another side of this alleyway. I pushed a door and went inside to ask. There was no one to be seen. Inside was also a VIP dining suite. There was no people there either. A paper frame notice on the wall said this: "Reasons for the formation of the Metropolitan Police Force is to keep the Queen's peace." I was in a police station. Oh no! To prove it, my friends would never believe this. And to prove it, I foolishly borrowed the sign. It was only made out of paper. As I left, a police car pulled me over. One thing and another, I was put in a jail cell. The chief of police came to give me a hot tea, a hot pizza, and a photocopy of the sign. Next day, this incident was there on the front page of the Camden News. Ask yourself, how much do you trust the people of the world? Trust reality and society? Trust people? How deep is your love, your faith in the common people? Would you trust falling upon them to support you? Even the police gave me food. They made merit. Notice how quickly a minor comment becomes a story. First there is contact, then interpretation, then memory searches for supporting evidence, then projection anticipates future harm. What began as sound becomes a whole interpreted story. Reflection reveals the layering. Remove one layer and the whole structure weakens. I was always very keen to help people. If I ever got new ideas, tips, or know-how to improve people's lives. When I worked in England, someone showed me how to clean the playing head on a tape cassette player using a cotton wool ball and some lighter fluid or gas. I was amazed at the transformation in sound quality. The music before suddenly sounded crystal clear. So imagine when I arrived at a tiny fishing village in the Philippines and heard their warbling, muffled music over the stereo speakers. Proudly I said, "Aha! Watch this," like I was about to perform a scientific miracle. Many villagers gathered round as I got a cotton ball. Children rushed over to see what was happening. People stopped cooking to go and see. A lighter fluid can was brought. Triumphantly, I dabbed it onto the cotton. Just then, a voice came from the village boys. "Yes," he said, "we already know how to clean the head." I was immediately deflated, and like a failed magician, dabbed the magnetic head of the tape player. The music cassette went in. I pressed play. The music sounded exactly the same. What an anticlimax. The sense of security from finances is risky. The more you accumulate, when you die, you won't take nothing with you but your karma. Clarity about purpose often widens when identity loosens. When work is no longer used to secure self-worth, it can serve by contributing to the community instead. The bigger picture emerges not from amplifying the ego, but from reducing its noise. Real change begins when we see that identity strategies are defensive, not essential. The moment we recognize that titles and comparison are protective layers, not core structure, behavior shifts. Transformation is less about acquiring new status and more about releasing unnecessary scaffolding. Fatigue alters perception. Hunger sharpens irritation. Poor sleep magnifies threat. An identity often feels unstable when the body is strained. The mind then constructs explanations. I am failing. I am inadequate. In reality, physiology is influencing interpretation. Recognizing this link prevents over-personalizing temporary states. Quiet reflection reveals how frequently thought describes identity. In stillness, one can observe memory arising, projection forming, reaction building. Insight here is not mystical. Identity appears through mental activity. When activity slows, the structure becomes visible. Sometimes success is a great anticlimax. When I was 22, I went to Sydney, Australia. I worked very, very hard in the city as an illustrator and soon was working for the national newspaper group. It was tough, and I needed time in nature to be with wildlife and the forest. I took a train from the city centre. Those days you could ride with one of the doors open and watch the country going by. Evening was falling. I hadn't planned where to go, just thrown a few things in a bag and grabbed my sleeping bag. Soon, sun went down and the train was moving through villages and trees. I picked a random small station and got off. I wanted to head for the forest. I walked in the dark and found some trees. I curled up there and fell fast asleep. I woke up deep inside my sleeping bag to dawn light and the sound of birds. Then a strange sound. I peeked out of my sleeping bag to see a golf ball. I was in a few trees that were in the middle of a huge golf course. Some tips. So, daily life. Set boundaries for work and life. Create clear boundaries between work hours and personal time to maintain a healthy balance. Tackle procrastination. Identify the underlying reasons for procrastination and use specific techniques like 2-minute tasks to overcome them. Track progress. Use apps, journals, spreadsheets to track your progress on goals and reflect on successes and areas for improvement. Mindful breathing. Use mindful breathing techniques throughout the day to stay grounded and present during work. Time blocking. Allocate specific time slots in your day for focused work, relaxation, and reflection to maintain balance. Practice compassionate leadership. Approach leadership with empathy and a focus on uplifting others, creating an inclusive work environment. Continuous learning. Dedicate time each week to learning something new that aligns with your work or life goals. Celebrate small wins. Recognize and celebrate incremental achievements along the way to keep motivation high. Critical reflection. We assume accumulation equals safety, that accreditation equals worth, legacy equals permanence. But who decided this? Are these truths or inherited scripts? If titles and possessions vanished, what would remain? Question the equation between status and self. There comes a moment when success fails to silence doubt. That disappointment can liberate. If achievement cannot secure identity, perhaps steadiness lies elsewhere. Growth begins when proving yourself feels less urgent than understanding yourself. Money. Do you really own anything? Everything is impermanent. A man was at the golf club bar having a drink. The phone rang. Yes? Where are you? I'm at the golf club. How did it go? Wonderful. I had a great round. Well, you know that BMW Sportster I've been talking about? They have one down at the showroom. I'm so excited to go see it. Oh, he said. Go on then. You've been wanting that. Get yourself that. You deserve it. Go ahead, buy it. See you later. Bye. Then he turned to the bar, holding up the phone. Hello, whose phone is this? The Goose and the Golden Egg. There was once a countryman who possessed the most beautiful goose you can imagine. For every day then, he visited the nest. The goose had laid a beautiful, glittering, golden egg. The countryman took the eggs to market and soon began to get rich. But it was not long before he grew impatient with the goose, because she gave him only a single one golden egg a day. He was not getting rich kind of fast enough. Then one day, after he had finished counting his money, the idea came to him that he could get all the golden eggs at once by killing the goose and cutting it open. But when the deed was done, not a single golden egg did he find, and his precious goose was dead. The moral: those who have plenty want more, and so lose all they have. There comes a moment when success fails to silence doubt. That disappointment can liberate. If achievement cannot secure identity, perhaps steadiness lies elsewhere. Growth begins when proving yourself feels less urgent than understanding yourself. Are your choices guided by fear of irrelevance or by genuine values? When actions protect an image, anxiety grows. When actions align with integrity and usefulness, comparison softens. Identity shifts from projection to practice. A man said to me, "I don't mean to brag, but I have my own private jet. But the rest of the jacuzzi belongs to my mum." He said, "Money, if it does not bring you happiness, well, it will at least help you be miserable in comfort." And banks. You know what a bank is? A bank is a place that will lend you money if you can prove that you don't need it. He had been to see that tailor, the one who gambles a lot, who told him, "There is a very easy way to return from a casino with a small fortune. Go there with a large one." Personally, I'm so poor, I can't even pay attention. Some creative problem-solving tips. Rigid identity limits innovation. When we stop defending past credentials or accumulated expertise, new solutions appear. Creativity expands when memory informs action, but does not imprison possibility. Striving for security can become self-criticism. Self-compassion recognizes that identity is constructed from memory and projection, not fixed essence. Progress becomes sustainable when we treat ourselves as learners, not imposters under surveillance. You can lose your money and your identity, all your papers. I did. I once spent a month drawing portraits on Greek islands. The currency was thin paper notes. I had stacks of them in my waist pouch. I wanted to fly to Turkey to see the Blue Mosque. I bought a ticket to fly to an island just off the coast of Turkey and travel on from there. I bought it and waited for my flight in the airport. I fell fast asleep. Suddenly waking up, I saw it was only 15 minutes to take off. I raced to the counter, flapping my ticket. The man said, No, wrong airport, wrong airport. If you get a taxi, you might just make it." I raced to the door for a taxi. Glancing behind me, I saw a long trail of paper money across the floor of the airport. The taxi door was open. I left the cash and we screeched away. I just made it. I would draw more portraits, never mind. But as it happened, the island was full of poor old retired men. No one wanted portraits. I was sent money by insurance. I bought a bright orange ferry ticket. They kept your passport to be returned on board. I wandered up the plank of the huge white cruise ship. It set off. They came to me. "Orange ticket." "No, green ticket." They said, "Oh no, that is that little ferry just over there." I was going the wrong way, back to a Greek city with no passport and almost no money. So it can help when you've got a lot on, break large projects into smaller, more manageable tasks to reduce the overwhelm and boost productivity. Set boundaries for work and life. Create clear boundaries between work hours and personal time to maintain a healthy balance. Find someone to check in with regularly, an accountability partner, about your progress towards your goals. And prioritize daily. Identify the most important tasks each day and focus your energy on those first before moving to less critical ones. On the spiritual path, financial security, accreditation, and legacy gradually reveal themselves as provisional identities. Memory builds a story. Projection defends it. Practice exposes how comparison and fear of irrelevance disturb peace more than circumstance itself. Viewed neutrally, identity consists of accumulated experiences, qualifications, and social feedback interpreted through memory and projected forward as expectation. Financial shifts, comparison, or status changes are events. The instability arises not from facts, but from attachment to interpretation. George Bernard Shaw said, "Life is a sort of splendid torch before handing it on to future generations." But your children will probably say, "No thanks, I have one on my phone already." William Shakespeare said, "There is no legacy so rich as honesty," which he may have borrowed from the internet. After all, as my uncle said, we will be known forever by the tracks we leave, as he retired from being a plastic surgeon. Tracing back to the Han Dynasty poetry, this proverb encourages gratitude and ethical awareness. When drinking water, think of its source. 饮水思源, emphasizing that one should acknowledge support and foundational sources rather than taking benefits for granted. Remember the origin of the things you benefited from. Be grateful, mindful, and responsible. Recognize that wealth is built on effort, opportunity, and sometimes familial or societal support. I once asked my grandfather how he'd lived so long. He smiled and said, "I sprinkle a little gunpowder on my cereal every morning." I always thought that was a little weird, but he did live a long life and left a great legacy, a thriving career, loving wife, 7 children, 16 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and a massive hole in the crematorium wall. Life and work are like a journey, with obstacles, milestones, and lessons along the way. Life and work are like pieces of a puzzle, where each part needs to fit together to complete the whole picture. Growth, work, and purpose are like tending to a garden, requiring care, patience, and nourishment. Life and work are like a dance, with movement, rhythm, and balance that come with practice and time. Legacy is less about monuments and more about influence. Each action, conversation, and decision leaves subtle traces in people and systems. Impact grows through consistency, not spectacle. Work becomes meaningful when measured by contribution rather than applause. When work connects to something larger than personal gain, energy stabilizes. Purpose outlasts mood and circumstance. It transforms effort into commitment. Even setbacks feel instructional rather than defeating when aligned with deeper intention and values. Security is not something you can finally secure once and for all. It is how you relate to change, money, titles, reputation, and legacy that all have their place, but they cannot carry the weight of identity alone. Comparison can refine you. Accreditation can train you, and even imposter syndrome can stretch you. Let your work express contribution rather than fear. Build, earn, learn, but don't confuse the scaffolding with the self. Financial security, that's just future you getting a care package. Accumulation means you've been busy building tools. Legacy shows you want to leave good footprints. Comparison can be friendly competition with your own potential. Accreditation proves you stuck with something. Imposter syndrome means you're stretching. Fear of irrelevance, you care about contributing. An identity as memory plus projection, that's your mind running a creative trailer for the next chapter.